The flickering candlelight danced across the polished mahogany table, reflecting in the crystal glasses I'd so carefully chosen. October 14th, our anniversary. I smoothed down the tablecloth, a nervous flutter in my stomach. He should be home any minute, I murmured to myself, adjusting the single red rose in the silver vase. Everything was perfect, just as it always was for our special occasions. I'd spent the afternoon preparing Marcus's favorite meal, seared scallops, followed by a rich beef bourguignon, and ending with a decadent chocolate torte. He'll love it, I thought, picturing the pleased look on his face. I heard the key turn in the lock, and my heart skipped a beat. "Marcus, darling, you're home," I called out, my voice a little breathless. He stepped into the apartment, his face drawn and pale. He didn't even glance at the table, laden with the food I'd lovingly prepared. Instead, he dropped his briefcase onto the floor with a thud that echoed through the otherwise silent penthouse. "We need to talk, Victoria," he said, his voice flat and devoid of any warmth. My smile faltered. "Of course, darling. Is everything all right?" I asked, my hand instinctively reaching for his arm. He flinched away from my touch. "No, Victoria, everything is not all right," he snapped. "In fact, things are far from all right." He ran a hand through his hair, his eyes avoiding mine. This wasn't like him. Marcus was always so composed, so in control. Seeing him this agitated unnerved me. "What is it, Marcus? You're scaring me." I stepped closer, my concern growing. He sighed, a heavy, burdened sound. "I'm leaving you, Victoria." The words hung in the air, sharp and cold, slicing through the warmth of the candlelight and the aroma of the carefully prepared dinner. I stared at him, my breath catching in my throat. "Leaving me," I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. "Leaving us? But why? What's happened?" He looked at me then, a strange mixture of guilt and defiance in his eyes. "I've met someone else," he admitted, his voice low. "I'm in love with her." My world tilted on its axis. Everything I thought I knew, everything I believed in, crumbled around me. "Who is she?" I asked, my voice trembling. He hesitated, then said a name that meant nothing to me. "Cassandra. She's younger, Victoria, and she makes me feel alive again." He said the words alive again as if our 20 years of marriage had been some sort of living death. The sting of his betrayal was sharp, immediate, visceral. "Younger," I repeated, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. All the effort I'd put into tonight, into our marriage, felt like a cruel joke. The beautiful dress I'd chosen, the carefully prepared meal, the anticipation of a happy evening, it all seemed absurd now, mocked by the cold reality of his confession. "And you're just going to leave?" I asked, gesturing vaguely at the apartment, at the life we'd built together, this apartmenter life, everything. He nodded, not meeting my gaze. "I've already found a place. I'll be moving out tomorrow." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. My heart lurched. For a moment, a flicker of desperate hope ignited within me. Was he having second thoughts? Was this some sort of twisted, belated anniversary gift? But then he opened the box, and my hope died a swift, painful death. Inside lay my grandmother's emerald ring, the one Marcus had given to me on our 10th anniversary, a symbol of our enduring love. He held it out to me. "I think you should have this back," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. The sight of the ring in his hand, offered back to me like some unwanted trinket, was the final blow. I didn't take it. Instead, I turned away, my vision blurring with tears. I walked to the window, staring out at the glittering city lights below, the cityscape suddenly looking alien and hostile. I took a deep, shuddering breath, trying to compose myself. "So that's it then?" I asked, my voice tight with unshed tears. 20 years just erased. He shifted uncomfortably. "It's not like that, Victoria. I'll make sure you're taken care of. You won't have to worry about money." His words, meant to reassure, only fueled my anger. He thought he could buy me off the race to decades of marriage with a financial settlement. "Don't patronize me, Marcus," I said, turning back to face him, my voice shaking with suppressed rage. "You think money can compensate for this? For the betrayal, the humiliation?" I gestured at the table, at the carefully prepared meal, the flickering candles, the single red rose. "All this for nothing." He sighed again, that same weary, burdened sound. "I know this is difficult, Victoria, but it's for the best. We can't go back." He picked up his briefcase and walked towards the door. "I'll be in touch about the arrangements," he said, his voice barely a whisper. Then he was gone, leaving me standing alone in the silence of our penthouse apartment, the scent of the beef bourguignon suddenly thick and cloying in the air. The candlelight, meant to create a romantic ambience, now cast long, distorted shadows across the room, mirroring the fractured state of my life. As I stared at the untouched meal, a single, chilling thought pierced through the fog of my despair. He wanted to leave, fine. Let him. But he wouldn't walk away with everything, not while I still had a breath left in my body. He clearly underestimated who he was dealing with. Rain lashed against the panoramic windows of our penthouse dining room, blurring the city lights into a shimmering haze. "I've fallen in love with someone else," Marcus said, his voice flat, devoid of the warmth I'd known for decades. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating, like the storm raging outside. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. "Who?" I managed to ask, my voice barely a whisper. He shifted in his seat, avoiding my gaze. "Her name is Cassandra," he mumbled, twisting the wedding ring on his finger. I watched, mesmerized, as the platinum band, a symbol of our vows, of a lifetime of shared moments, seemed to constrict his finger, a tangible representation of the lies he'd built our life on. "Cassandra," I repeated, the name foreign and sharp on my tongue. "And how long has this been going on?" My hand trembled as I reached for my glass of wine, the crystal cool against my burning skin. "A few months," he admitted, finally meeting my eyes. "A few months," I echoed, incredulous. "A few months of deceit, while I planned our anniversary trip, while I picked out your favorite wine, while my voice cracked, the dam of my composure beginning to crumble." He reached across the table, his hand hovering over mine. "Victoria," he began, but I recoiled, pulling my hand away as if his touch were fire. "Don't," I said, my voice sharper now, the initial shock giving way to a cold, hard anger. "Don't touch me. Don't even try to explain." I stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the polished floor. You've already said enough. I walked to the window, staring out at the relentless downpour, the city lights now blurred by the tears welling in my eyes. So what happens now? I asked, my voice hollow, devoid of emotion. He sighed, a heavy, weary sound. I want a divorce, he stated, the words blunt and final. I want the penthouse, half the boutique hotels, one of the Teslas, he continued, outlining his demands as if we were discussing a business deal, not the dismantling of our lives. My jaw clenched, a muscle twitching in my cheek. This wasn't the man I'd married. This cold, calculating stranger, bargaining for possessions, was a far cry from the man who had once promised me the world. And what about Eleanor? I asked, my voice tight with suppressed fury. What about our daughter? Have you considered her feelings in all of this? He flinched, a flicker of guilt crossing his face. I'll talk to her, he mumbled, looking away. Of course you will, I said, the sarcasm dripping from my words. After you've broken her mother's heart, after you've shattered her family, you'll find the time to talk to her. I turned away from the window, facing him directly, my eyes blazing with a fire I hadn't known I possessed. You think you can just walk away from this, Marcus? I asked, my voice low and dangerous. You think you can just take half of everything we've built together and start a new life with your Cassandra? He shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his bravado faltering under my gaze. It's not that simple, Victoria, he said, his voice laced with a hint of warning. Oh, I think it is, I replied, a small, cold smile playing on my lips. You see, Marcus, you made a very big mistake. You underestimated me. I left the dining room without another word, the silence in the penthouse amplifying the storm raging both outside and within me. I walked into our bedroom, the familiar scent of his cologne now a sickening reminder of his betrayal. I opened my closet, pulling out a suitcase. Mechanically, I began packing, my mind numb with shock and grief. Each item of clothing, each piece of jewelry, each photograph I came across was a painful reminder of the life we'd shared, the life he'd so carelessly thrown away. As I packed, my mind raced, a whirlwind of emotions battling for dominance. Hurt, anger, confusion, and a growing sense of resolve warred within me. I wouldn't let him win. I wouldn't let him break me. I would rebuild, I would recover, and I would make him pay for what he had done. The first tendrils of a plan, a seed of revenge, began to take root in my mind, a small flicker of hope in the darkness that had enveloped my world. He thought he could just walk away with half of everything. He was wrong, dead wrong. He had no idea what I was capable of. He hadn't considered my inheritance, separate from our joint assets. He didn't know about the offshore accounts, the investments he'd never bothered to understand. He thought he knew me, but he didn't. Not anymore. I zipped the suitcase shut, the click echoing in the silent room. I looked around the bedroom one last time, taking in the familiar surroundings, knowing I wouldn't be back. Not like this. Not as the woman he had broken. I would return, but as someone new, someone stronger, someone he wouldn't recognize. Someone who would take back everything he thought he could steal. The rain continued to fall, a relentless torrent mirroring the turmoil within me. But even in the midst of the storm, a small spark of determination flickered within me, a promise of the revenge to come. I picked up my suitcase and walked out of the penthouse, leaving behind the shattered remnants of my marriage and stepping into the unknown, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The storm might be raging, but I wouldn't be swept away. I would weather it. I would survive, and I would emerge stronger than ever before. He would regret the day he ever crossed me. He would learn that a woman scorned is a force to be reckoned with. He would learn, in time, just how sweet revenge could be. Rain lashed against the panoramic windows of our dining room, mirroring the storm raging inside me. 2 years, I whispered, the words catching in my throat. 2 years you've been lying to me, living a double life while my voice trailed off. Marcus sat across the mahogany table, his face a mask of what I could only describe as weary guilt. He didn't deny it. He couldn't. The evidence was overwhelming. A cruel tapestry woven from intercepted texts, furtive phone calls I'd overheard, and the damning lipstick stain on his shirt collar I'd found last week. 2 years, I repeated, the words now laced with ice. While we were celebrating our anniversary, you were with her. He shifted uncomfortably, his gaze flitting to the rain-streaked city below. Victoria, he began, his voice low and pleading. It just happened. Happened. I laughed, a hollow, brittle sound. 2 years of deceit just happened. Do you even hear yourself? The room felt stifling, air thick with unspoken accusations, and the ghost of our once happy memories. I pushed myself away from the table, the scrape of the chair legs against the polished floor echoing the discord in my soul. Tell me everything, I demanded, my voice trembling with a mixture of rage and despair. Don't you dare leave out a single detail. He began to speak, his words a torrent of justifications and half-truths. He talked about Cassandra, the woman he'd met at a conference, her youthful energy, and how she made him feel alive again. He spoke of stolen weekends, secret rendezvous, and gifts he'd bought her with the money we'd saved for Eleanor and Julian's wedding. Each word was a dagger twisting into my heart, chipping away at the foundation of the life I thought we'd built together. I listened in stunned silence, my mind reeling from the sheer audacity of his betrayal and our anniversary. I finally managed to ask, my voice barely a whisper, was that part of the charade too? He averted his gaze, his silence a confirmation more damning than any confession. The image of us, just a week ago, raising a glass of champagne to 25 years of marriage, flashed before my eyes. The memory, once cherished, now felt tainted, a cruel mockery of the love I thought we shared. You took me to that restaurant, I said, my voice thick with unshed tears. The one we went to on our first date. You looked me in the eyes, and I couldn't finish the sentence. The pain was too raw, too visceral. He reached across the table, his hand outstretched as if to comfort me. I recoiled as if he'd touched me with a hot iron. Don't, I hissed, my voice laced with venom. Don't you dare touch me. He withdrew his hand, his face etched with a mixture of hurt and frustration. Victoria, please, he pleaded. Let's try to be civil. I finished for him, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Is that what you call this? After you systematically dismantled our marriage, piece by piece, lie by lie, I stood up, my legs unsteady beneath me. Get out, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Just get out. He didn't argue. He simply stood up, his shoulders slumped in defeat, and walked towards the door. As he reached the threshold, he paused, turning back to face me. "Victoria," he said, his voice laced with a hint of desperation, "to still care about you." I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound that echoed through the empty dining room. "If you cared about me," I said, my voice cold and steady, "you wouldn't have done this. You wouldn't have shattered everything we built together." He opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off. "Just go, Marcus," I said, my voice flat and devoid of emotion. "Before I say something I'll regret." He hesitated for a moment longer, then turned and walked out, leaving me alone in the opulent prison of our penthouse apartment. The rain continued to batter against the windows, a relentless reminder of the storm raging inside me. I sank into a chair, my body trembling with exhaustion and grief. As I sat there, staring out at the rain-swept city, a flicker of something other than despair began to stir within me. It was a small spark, a tiny ember of resolve in the vast darkness of my pain. He thought he had broken me. He thought he could walk away from our life together without consequence. He was wrong. I would rebuild. I would reclaim everything he had taken from me, and when I was done, he would understand the true meaning of pain. He would regret the day he ever crossed Victoria Sterling. The first step, I realized, was to call Eleanor. She needed to know, and she, I knew, would be on my side. She would help me fight. This, I vowed silently, was just the beginning. Rain lashed against the window of my hotel office, mirroring the tempest inside me. I stared at the city lights blurring through the downpour, each shimmering drop a tiny reflection of my shattered life. "He really said that, Mom." Eleanor's voice, small and hesitant, broke through my reverie. I turned to face her, my beautiful daughter, her eyes wide with disbelief. "He said I was past my prime, that Cassandra brought a youthful energy to his life that I could no longer provide." I swallowed hard, the words like acid on my tongue. Eleanor crossed the room and knelt beside my chair, taking my hand in hers. "I'm so sorry, Mom. You don't deserve this." Her words, though meant to comfort, only amplified the hollow ache in my chest. I managed a weak smile. "It's all right, darling. I'll be fine." But even as I said the words, I knew they were a lie. I wasn't fine. I was broken. 25 years. 25 years of building a life with Marcus, of nurturing our family, of supporting his ambitions, all for it to crumble into dust in the space of a single, callous conversation. We had built this hotel empire together, brick by brick, starting with that tiny bed and breakfast on the coast. Now, he wanted to hand it all over to Cassandra, a woman barely older than Eleanor. "He's actually suggested she take over your role as head of design," Eleanor said, her voice laced with anger. "He thinks you'll just step aside." A flicker of something cold and hard ignited within me. Step aside? Was that what he truly believed? After everything I had poured into this business, into our life together, he's mistaken, I said, my voice quieter than I intended. Eleanor looked at me, a spark of hope in her eyes. "What are you going to do?" I met her gaze, a new resolve hardening my features. "I'm going to remind him exactly who built this empire." I stood up, the city lights suddenly appearing sharper, clearer through the rain-streaked glass. and I'm not going to let him take it from me. The following days were a blur of quiet activity. I spent hours poring over financial records, tracing the intricate web of our assets. The penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park, the string of boutique hotels scattered across the country, the fleet of Tesla vehicles all acquired through our joint efforts, but meticulously structured in a way that gave me ultimate control. Marcus, in his arrogance, had always dismissed my involvement in the financial side of the business. "You focus on the pretty things, darling," he'd say. "I'll handle the numbers." Now, that oversight would be his downfall. I called Julian, Eleanor's fiancé, a sharp young lawyer who had always shown me a quiet respect that Marcus had never bothered to offer. "Julian," I said, getting straight to the point, "I need your help." He didn't hesitate. "Of course, Mrs. Sterling. Anything." I outlined my plan, explaining the legal framework I had carefully constructed over the years, a framework that Marcus, blinded by his infatuation, had completely overlooked. Julian listened intently, occasionally asking clarifying questions, his legal mind quickly grasping the intricacies of my strategy. "It's brilliant, Mrs. Sterling," he said, a hint of admiration in his voice. "Ironclad. He won't be able to touch a single asset." I felt a grim satisfaction. Good. I want him to understand what he's throwing away. I spent the next few weeks working closely with Julian, refining my strategy, ensuring every legal loophole was closed. I withdrew funds from our joint accounts, discreetly transferring them to accounts solely under my name. I contacted the board of directors, reminding them of my crucial role in the company's success. I even started making plans for a new line of luxury hotels, focusing on sustainable design, a concept I knew Marcus would despise. The days were long and exhausting, but I was fueled by a quiet fury, a determination to reclaim what was rightfully mine. I barely slept, my mind racing with plans and possibilities. I saw little of Eleanor, but she called every day, her voice a steady source of strength. "He's been trying to reach you," she told me one evening. "Ignoring him is driving him crazy." I smiled, a genuine smile this time. Good. Let him stew. Our anniversary was approaching, a date that had once held so much joy, now a bitter reminder of my betrayal. I decided to make it a day Marcus would never forget. "Julian," I said, my voice steady and calm, "I'm ready to execute the plan." The rain had stopped, and the city lights glittered like a million scattered diamonds against the velvet night sky. I looked out the window, a sense of anticipation thrumming through me. The storm inside me had quieted, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. I was no longer the heartbroken wife, the discarded relic of a man's midlife crisis. I was Victoria Sterling, and I was about to take back everything that was mine. Our anniversary was tomorrow, and Marcus was in for a very unpleasant surprise. The crisp click of my heels on the marble floor of Blackwood Investments echoed the steady beat of my resolve. He thought he could just walk away. I muttered to myself, adjusting the strap of my briefcase. He underestimated me. Today, Marcus's carefully constructed world would begin to crumble, piece by carefully placed piece. My first stop was the office of Mr. Henderson, Marcus's most important client. I had scheduled a casual meeting, feigning concern for Marcus's recent distraction and subtly hinting at his erratic behavior. "I'm just so worried about him, Mr. Henderson," I confided, lowering my voice conspiratorially. "He's been making some unusual decisions lately." "I'm sure it's nothing, but I thought you should be aware, Mr. Henderson, a man who valued stability above all else, listened intently, his brow furrowing with each carefully chosen word I uttered. I left his office with a sense of grim satisfaction. The seed of doubt had been planted. Next, I visited the city's most influential business club, a place where Marcus often held court, boasting about his latest deals. Just popping in to collect some of Marcus's belongings, I explained brightly to the receptionist, giving her a winning smile. Once inside, I accidentally left a folder on a table in the main lounge. It contained fabricated emails detailing Marcus's reckless investments and questionable accounting practices. I knew the club was rife with gossip, and this little tidbit would spread like wildfire. "Oh dear, how clumsy of me," I exclaimed, feigning embarrassment, as I retrieved the folder after a calculated amount of time. By then, several members had strolled by, their eyes lingering on the exposed documents. One even picked up a stray sheet, a sly smirk playing on his lips. My phone buzzed. It was Eleanor. "Mom, are you sure about this?" she asked, her voice tinged with worry. "Julian thinks it's going too far, darling," I replied, my voice unwavering. "This is not about revenge. This is about reclaiming what is rightfully mine. Your father made his choice, and now I'm making mine." Eleanor sighed. "Just be careful, Mom, please." I assured her I would and hung up. I understood her apprehension, but she didn't see what I saw. The years of subtle dismissals, the patronizing pats on the head, the slow erosion of my own identity in the shadow of Marcus's ego. This wasn't just about the affair. It was about taking back my life. My next target was the annual charity gala, a glittering event Marcus relished. He loved the spotlight, the adulation, the power he felt holding court among the city's elite. I arrived dressed in a stunning emerald gown, a stark contrast to the muted colors I had favored during my marriage. Heads turned as I entered the ballroom, a faint murmur rippling through the crowd. "Victoria," a surprised voice said. It was Carolyn, a society columnist known for her sharp wit and even sharper pen. "You look radiant." "Thank you, Carolyn," I replied, giving her a knowing smile. "I feel radiant." I casually mentioned Marcus's recent health issues, alluding to stress and exhaustion, while strategically placing myself near influential donors and board members. The whispers began again, this time tinged with concern. Marcus's image of invincibility was starting to crack. The final piece of the puzzle was a carefully timed anonymous tip to the regulatory authorities, detailing some of Marcus's more questionable business dealings. I knew it would trigger an investigation, one that would tie him up in legal battles for months, if not years. It was a risky move, but I had calculated the risks and deemed them acceptable. He played a dangerous game. "Marcus," I whispered to myself, watching him across the ballroom, oblivious to the storm gathering around him. He was still smiling, still charming, still basking in the glow of his perceived success. But I knew the truth. The foundation of his world was crumbling beneath his feet. He just didn't know it yet. As the evening drew to a close, I slipped away unnoticed, a quiet smile playing on my lips. The first stage of my plan was complete. Marcus was surrounded, his reputation tarnished, his career hanging by a thread. I had taken the first steps toward dismantling his empire, brick by carefully chosen brick. And as I drove away in my own Tesla, a gift I had cleverly secured for myself weeks earlier, I thought about our upcoming anniversary. Marcus had planned a lavish celebration, a reaffirmation of his success. It would be interesting to see how he celebrated now, with the shadow of my revenge looming large. The game was far from over. The mahogany table gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights of the conference room. My lawyer, Miss Finch, adjusted her glasses and smiled reassuringly. "Victoria," she said, her voice calm and professional, "I believe we've covered all the necessary points. Are you ready to proceed?" I took a deep breath, my heart pounding in my chest. "Yes," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "Let's finalize this." I had spent weeks poring over documents, learning the intricacies of our finances, a world Marcus had always kept me at arm's length from. He'd always insisted I focus on the softer side of our lives, the social engagements, the charities, Eleanor's upbringing while he handled the business. He'd called it a division of labor, a partnership. Now I saw it for what it was, a way to keep me ignorant, dependent. He underestimated me, I thought, a flicker of steel entering my resolve. Miss Finch handed me a thick folder. "These are the revised asset allocation documents. Everything is outlined here, per our discussions." I opened the folder, my eyes scanning the dense legalese. Beneath the jargon, I saw the culmination of my meticulous planning. The penthouse, the boutique hotel chain, the Tesla collection, assets I had helped build, assets Marcus had intended to enjoy with his new companion. "Not anymore," I murmured, a tight smile playing on my lips. "Marcus is still contesting the prenuptial agreement, claiming undue influence," Miss Finch said, interrupting my thoughts. "He alleges you pressured him into signing it." A bitter laugh escaped me. Pressured. He practically begged me to marry him. I recalled the lavish proposals, the extravagant gifts. He'd been so eager to secure his position, to merge our family's wealth. How quickly things change. I mused, my gaze drifting towards the window, towards the city that held so many memories, both bitter and sweet. "We have substantial evidence to refute his claims," Ms. Finch assured me. "Your premarital financial records, the independent witnesses present at the signing, his argument won't hold up in court." She paused, then added, "His lawyer is pushing for a settlement. They're offering a significant sum." "A settlement?" I asked, my voice laced with disbelief. "He thinks he can buy me off. It's a generous offer, Victoria," Miss Finch said cautiously. "Enough to secure your financial future." I met her gaze, my expression unwavering. "Generous. It's a fraction of what I'm entitled to, a fraction of what we built together." I closed the folder, the sound echoing in the quiet room. "Tell his lawyer I'm not interested." Ms. Finch nodded, a flicker of admiration in her eyes. "Very well." We proceed to trial. The following weeks were a blur of depositions, legal maneuvering, and endless strategy sessions. Marcus's lawyer, a slick, silver-haired man named Mr. Caldwell, tried every tactic imaginable. He attempted to portray me as a vindictive, gold-digging wife, driven by jealousy and greed. He paraded character witnesses who painted a distorted picture of our marriage, claiming I had neglected my duties, that I had been cold and distant. Did you ever witness Mrs. Blackwood displaying affection towards her husband? Mr. Caldwell asked Eleanor's fiancé, Julian, during his deposition. Julian, bless his heart, hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. I can't recall any specific instances, he stammered, avoiding my gaze. I knew he was trying to be diplomatic, to avoid taking sides. He didn't understand the full extent of Marcus's deception, the years of carefully crafted lies. But I had an ace up my sleeve, something Marcus, in his arrogance, had overlooked, something that would not only dismantle his case, but expose him for the fraud he truly was. It was a detail hidden deep within the financial records, a series of transactions masked as consulting fees paid to a shell corporation registered in the Cayman Islands, transactions that coincided suspiciously with his frequent business trips abroad, trips I now knew were rendezvous with his mistress. I revealed this information during my own testimony, presenting irrefutable evidence linking the Shell Corporation to Cassandra, Marcus's much younger paramour. The courtroom fell silent. Marcus's face, usually so composed, contorted in a mixture of shock and fury. Mr. Caldwell sputtered, trying to object, but it was too late. The damage was done. The judge, a stern woman with a no-nonsense demeanor, ordered a full audit of Marcus's finances, including his business dealings and personal accounts. The results were devastating. Not only had Marcus been systematically siphoning funds from our joint accounts to finance his lavish affair, but he had also engaged in questionable tax practices, potentially exposing him to criminal charges. In the end, the judge ruled overwhelmingly in my favor. I was awarded full control of our assets, including the penthouse, the boutique hotels, and the Tesla collection. Marcus was left with nothing but his reputation in tatters and the prospect of a lengthy legal battle with the IRS. As I left the courthouse, the crisp autumn air felt invigorating. The weight that had been pressing down on me for months had finally lifted. I wasn't just a wronged wife anymore. I was a survivor. I had reclaimed my life, my power, and my future, and I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that the real celebration was yet to come. Our anniversary was just around the corner, and I had a special surprise planned for Marcus, a gift he would never forget. The stale air of the cramped studio apartment reeked of instant noodles and desperation. I almost didn't recognize Marcus sitting on the edge of a stained futon, his expensive suit rumpled and his eyes bloodshot. "Marcus," I said softly, trying to keep my voice even. He looked up, startled. "Victoria, what are you doing here?" he stammered, pushing a greasy takeout container under the futon. I held up a manila envelope. "I thought you might need this," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "It's your termination notice from Blackwood Enterprises, effective immediately." His face paled. You can't do this," he sputtered, rising to his feet. "Blackwood Enterprises is my legacy. I built that company." I raised an eyebrow. "Built it?" I asked, a small smile playing on my lips. with whose money Marcus, whose inheritance formed the seed capital, whose connections opened the first doors. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He knew. He knew I was right. I continued. The board voted unanimously. They saw the financial irregularities, the questionable expenses. I paused, letting the words hang in the air. They agreed with me, Marcus. You are a liability. He sank back onto the futon, defeated. Cassandra, where is she? He mumbled, his voice barely audible. I shook my head. Cassandra made a wise choice. She realized her association with you was damaging her prospects. He didn't respond. He just sat there, staring blankly at the peeling paint on the wall. I took a step closer, placing the envelope on the futon beside him. I've also initiated divorce proceedings, I said, my voice firm. You won't be receiving any alimony, Marcus. The prenuptial agreement we signed, the one you insisted on, it's quite ironclad. The penthouse, the cars, the hotels, he muttered, his voice cracking. Gone, Marcus, I said, my gaze steady. All rightfully returned to their original owner. I turned to leave, pausing at the doorway. Oh, and Marcus, I said, looking back at his slumped figure. Happy anniversary. The drive back to the penthouse was exhilarating. The city lights blurred past, each one a tiny spark of triumph. I pulled into the private garage, the sleek lines of my Tesla reflecting the shimmering glass of the building. As I stepped out of the car, Eleanor and Julian were waiting for me in the lobby. Eleanor rushed towards me, her eyes shining. Mom, we heard. We're so proud of you, she exclaimed, hugging me tightly. Julian smiled warmly. Victoria, that was masterful. You completely outmaneuvered him. It was a long time coming, I said, returning their smiles. We rode the private elevator up to the penthouse, the panoramic view of the city unfolding before us. Inside, the apartment was bathed in the warm glow of the setting sun. A table was set on the balcony, overlooking the sparkling cityscape. Champagne flutes glinted in the fading light. We wanted to celebrate, Eleanor said, gesturing towards the table. To a new beginning, Julian added, raising his glass. As we toasted to the future, I couldn't help but think back to the day Marcus had delivered his cruel ultimatum. He had stood in this very penthouse, boasting about his new life, his younger lover. He had belittled me, mocked my contributions, dismissed me as if I were nothing. He had thought he could take everything from me, everything I had worked so hard for. He had underestimated me. He had failed to realize that the woman he had married, the woman he thought he knew, was capable of so much more than he could ever imagine. The champagne bubbles danced on my tongue, a sweet symphony of victory. The city lights twinkled below, a dazzling testament to my resilience. I looked at Eleanor and Julian, their faces filled with love and admiration. I had not only reclaimed my life, I had secured their future. And as I gazed out at the breathtaking vista, I knew that this was just the beginning. This empire I had built, the empire Marcus had tried to steal, was now stronger than ever. And I, Victoria Sterling, was finally free. The city lights twinkled below, a breathtaking panorama from my penthouse suite. It was a far cry from the cramped apartment I'd envisioned for myself after Marcus declared, I'm leaving you, Victoria. Cassandra and I, we deserve to be happy. But things hadn't gone quite according to his script. The champagne flute I'd been holding that night hadn't shattered against the wall. It shattered his carefully crafted illusion of control. My hand trembled slightly as I raised my own glass of champagne, the bubbles mirroring the effervescent sense of victory that filled me. "To new beginnings," I whispered, the words echoing in the spacious room. It had been a long and arduous journey, but I was finally here, exactly where I needed to be, higher, even, than I'd been before. Eleanor and Julian joined me, their faces alight with a mixture of awe and concern. "Mom," Eleanor began hesitantly, "are you sure about this? It's a lot." She gestured around the lavish suite, her eyes wide. Julian nodded in agreement, his hand resting protectively on her arm. "It is extravagant, Victoria," especially after he trailed off, clearly uncomfortable mentioning Marcus. "I earned this, my dears," I said, my voice firm but gentle, "every single bit of it." I walked over to the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city sprawling beneath us like a glittering tapestry. I pointed towards a cluster of buildings in the distance. "See those hotels, Eleanor? The Blackwood boutique chain. They're mine now," Eleanor gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Julian looked equally stunned. "But how?" he stammered, his brow furrowed. "Let's just say Marcus wasn't as clever as he thought he was," I replied, a small smile playing on my lips. I turned back to face them, savoring the moment. He signed everything over to me, thinking he was securing our future. He had no idea he was signing his own financial death warrant. I explained how I'd anticipated his move, subtly manipulating the prenuptial agreement years ago, a clause so obscure even our lawyers had overlooked it. It tied his business assets directly to my financial well-being, a safety net I'd prayed I'd never need. Until Cassandra. Eleanor rushed over and hugged me tightly. "You're amazing, Mom," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I was so worried about you." Julian, ever the pragmatist, chimed in. "This changes everything, Victoria. You're incredibly wealthy." He looked around the penthouse again, his eyes taking in the opulent furnishings, the breathtaking view. "Beyond wealthy," he corrected himself. "Wealth isn't just about money." "Julian," I said softly, my gaze fixed on the twinkling city lights. "It's about freedom. It's about having the power to choose your own path." I'd been a shadow of myself after Marcus left, adrift in a sea of grief and betrayal. Now, I felt stronger, more resilient than ever before. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my life. "I've arranged something special for us," I announced, turning back to them with a mischievous glint in my eye. "Tomorrow, we're taking a trip." I handed Eleanor a small, beautifully wrapped box. "Open it," I urged her. Inside, nestled on a bed of velvet, were 3 first-class tickets to the Maldives. Eleanor's jaw dropped. "The Maldives, Mom, this is incredible." "It's just the beginning," I assured her, my voice filled with a quiet confidence. "We're going to celebrate our new life, the 3 of us," and I added with a knowing smile, "it just so happens to be our wedding anniversary." The irony wasn't lost on me. While Marcus was likely wallowing in his self-made misery, I would be basking in the sun, surrounded by the turquoise waters of the Indian Ocean, celebrating my liberation. It was the perfect anniversary gift to myself The Maldives trip wasn't just a vacation. It was a symbol of my rebirth. It was a declaration to the world, and to Marcus, that I was not broken, not defeated. I was reborn, stronger and more determined than ever. And the best part, this was just the beginning of my new chapter. I had the resources, the drive, and the unwavering support of my daughter. The world was my oyster, and I was ready to savor every moment. The penthouse, the hotels, the Teslas, they were all symbols of my triumph, tangible reminders of the power I'd reclaim. As I raised my glass for another sip of champagne, I knew, with absolute certainty, that Marcus Blackwood would regret the day he underestimated Victoria Sterling. He may have taken my husband, but he inadvertently gave me back myself, and that, I realized, was worth more than all the boutique hotels in the world.